Welcome to the Asshole Podcast. Let's get into it. All right, today is Thursday. It's a beautiful Thursday episode. We have more of Court of Thorns and Roses for you guys. It's chapters 11 and 12. We're flying through this book, if I'm being honest with you. And the book is getting a little interesting about time. It only took 10 chapters to kind of start getting interesting. For me, anyway. Maybe it's interesting to you guys. I'm not 100% sure. Like I said, I'm new to the whole book talk thing, and that's why I'm kind of starting my journey with it with you guys. And so if you remember last week, we were pretty much talking about how our girl, I think her name is Farah, something like that, she is a little bit caught in this love triangle with the two guys in the main house. And it seems like they are, and it seems like they're not. And then with her, it kind of seems like she has like this romantic thoughts of them, but then she's just like, no, I don't like them, so on and so forth. So it seems like there's a bit of tension kind of growing between her and them. And I kind of want to see where it goes and how it blossoms into something if it does. And then we also got at the end where she was talking about, there was some guy out in the garden or in the yard or whatever, and that guy may have been her, I believe, either dad or grandpa or whichever one it was. So we'll be able to, deep dive into that and get, onto the next episodes for that. So, but without further ado though, we do have our thread. Today's thread is an interesting one. It's what's the worst thing an ex has done to you after the breakup. So something they've done after you guys broke up. All right. So, tried to burn our house down with our pets inside. What? Threatened my entire family from infant to grandma. Called my work telling lies, trying to get me fired, destroyed my clothes and broke my computer, threw my cosmetics in the tub and filled it with water. There's more, but I'm tired. Believe it or not, this was all a last ditches effort to get me to reconsider the relationship. Batshit. I still hope he gets better. What the fuck? So this guy was just like, you know what? If I burn her house down, she'll get back together with me. Oh, let's go, baby. This is a great idea. Oh, if I take all her shit and I throw it in the toilet and I break her computer and all that kind of stuff, she'll get back with me. Oh, let's go. That's what I'm talking about, baby. And then he's just like, you know what? She hasn't got back together with me yet. I'm going to get her fired. Then she'll have all the time in the world to get back together with me. If she doesn't have to go to work, then she's going to have all the time in the world to get back together with me. All right, yeah. Oh, this is going to work. Like, crazy when you actually think about it in that kind of way. Like, that is how you were trying to justify, you know what I mean? Like, oh, brother, what are we doing here? You're crazy. Let's see. I think there are a lot of people who can't post in this thread because their ex killed them. Wow, that's a dark thought to think about. Because, I mean, that happens. I mean, it goes both ways, guy and girl. You know what I mean? It goes both ways. I wouldn't even say that it's more guy than it is girl. I wouldn't even say it's more girl than it is guy, just because people are nuts nowadays. And that's why I always tell friends and stuff like that, yo, if a girl has got a man and, she's down to cheat on you and all, or cheat on him with you and stuff like that, don't do it. Because the coochie is not worth dying for. Because that man is going to find you. And if he doesn't beat you to the inch of your life, he's gonna kill you. It's just crazy to me that dudes go out there and they do this. They date these girls and, or not date them, but, they'll have sex with a girl who has a boyfriend and all that kind of stuff. And it's just like, And then they sometimes, kill the girl or the guy, the girl find the guy cheating and she'll stab him a million times. Like, damn. Stalked me for 8 years. I moved, blocked him from everything, got off social media, and continued to block every new email and number he created. He even messaged my parents and left chocolates on their doorstep a year later. Last I heard of him was when I went overseas and started a WhatsApp account. I woke up one day with multiple voicemails from him crying and telling me to give him another chance. It was not endearing. It was crazy. Bro, you got it. He stalked this girl for 8 years. Man, like, what are you doing? Like, you know the type of transformation you could have gone through in 8 years. Think about it. If he went to the gym and ate a high protein diet for 8 years, that man would be buff as hell. That man would be huge. He'd be sitting there just walking around, can't even hold his arms to his side that big. And he'd be able to do it naturally. Why? Because it's just like all this energy that he's putting into that, he could put it into that. He could have started a business. You know, sure, he'd be struggling for the first 2 years, but I mean, he's focused, he's determined. All this fucking energy that he's putting into it, you know, all this time that he's spending on computer, creating emails and doing all this bullshit and this fuckery for this girl, he could be online chasing clients and finding people to, you know, help with his business and stuff like that. It's like 8 years of your life you just wasted over a girl who doesn't even want you. And you could have done so much more with that 8 years. You know, that's just wild to me that this dude was willing to just throw away 8 years of his life over a girl that doesn't want him. Wow, man. Wow. That's crazy to me. Absolutely crazy to me. My ex changed all of my Netflix recommendations to rom-coms and reality shows. Now I can't escape The Bachelor and Love Actually reruns. Oh, see, he was trying to do the whole Bruce Almighty thing. If you've ever seen the movie Bruce Almighty, when his girl catches him cheating or whatever, he'd be using his little godly powers to like put on rom-coms and put, you know, you miss Bruce and Bruce forever and you call him, you know what I mean, to get her to think about him all the time. And I think that's what he was trying to do. He was trying to get her to watch these rom-coms and be like, oh man, I miss when me and my boyfriend were together. Yeah, like, oh, I see what you're trying to do. You know, I see what you're trying to do, my guy. It ain't gonna work though, but hey, you could try, I guess. She broke up with me because she felt like we want different things from life. 3 days later, she tried inviting the guy she was cheating on me with to my apartment to cook dinner for him. She thought I was away that night. When I came home from work, I saw her prepare dessert. I knew what was up and found out about her infidelity. Oh. So my mans is just out at work. Working hard for the money. I work hard for the money. Bamp. Then he comes home and he sees this girl making dessert for another man. In his house, mind you. In his house. That's crazy. That's diabolical. That would put some kind of hurt in me that I would never be able to get over. I'd be sitting there just like, this hurts. Hurts bad. Shit. Ex-fling, if you want to call him that, spam me with digital camera nude photos of him and another woman in a weird wooden bath barrel. Why? Nick, what? What? So, did he just like meet this girl and he's over here taking pictures and he was just like, yeah, I'm going to send it to this bitch because if she sees me with another girl, then that's going to make her wild jealous and she's going to come back to me. And I bet you she was just looking at it like, ew, what the fuck? No. Oh, God. Delete. Like, brother, like, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? You think that's going to change her mind? Seeing you naked with another girl? She don't give a fuck. You were a fling, my guy. You were a fling and that's it. And she's just sitting there just like, brother, up there in the group chat, sitting in it like, look what this doofus sent me, thinking I was going to like crawl back to him or something. Like, bro, what the fuck? You're wild for that, man. Pretended to have killed himself and not answering any of my calls or texts. He cheated. Wow. Oh my goodness. So he was just like, oh, babe, I got to tell you something. I fucked up. I did something wrong. You know what I mean? She's like, what? What did you do? What did you do? He's like, I cheated. I didn't mean it, blah, blah, blah. And she was just like, oh my God, I can't believe you. All these years, da, 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 da. Like, we're done, so on and so forth. And he's like, no, you can't leave me. I'm going to kill myself. And then he like does it. And then she realizes like he didn't. You know what I mean? Like, oh, like, come on, man. You don't play with that, dude. And I've always told people, girls especially, because I don't even really see girls doing this bullshit. I only see guys really doing this bullshit. Let's keep it hundo P. That if you're breaking up with a guy and he says he's going to kill himself, then you talk to his friends and his family and you tell him, hey, look, this is what he told me, that he wants to end his life because I'm ending the relationship, so on and so forth. Look after him. And all that. And at that point, leave. Reason being is because you did everything in your power to make sure that that person gets help and that they are heard and understood by people who care and love for them, because you can no longer. And you move on. And it's not your fault if they end up doing it. It's not your fault. Why? Because you did everything in your power. You said you went to their parents, you went to their friends, you went to, their close family, whatever it may be. And you just say, you tell them, look, Jake over here is trying to kill himself because, I don't want to be in the relationship with him anymore, so on and so forth. Please, can you just look after him and make sure that he's okay, because I can't do it anymore. I just don't have the feelings. I need to move on with my life and what I got going on. And you do that and you move on with your life, and because, dude, it's just at that point where it's like, you can't keep getting sucked into something that is wrong for you just because you're guilting yourself into thinking, oh my God, it's my fault that they're doing this or they feel this way. No, it's not. It's not. That is guilt tripping 101, if I'm being honest with you. So, craziness. She spread all kinds of lies about me just to deliberately hurt me and make me lose as many friends as possible. She told people I hit her, cheated on her, sexually assaulted her, lied to her constantly, and all kinds of completely made up bullshit. Luckily, she came to her senses a few months later and admitted to many of them that she had lied just to hurt me, but I still lost a lot of old friends during the turmoil. Ooh, I've had that happen before. Man. Why? Because I'm not going to say all, but most girls can't take L's, man. When you realize, they don't like you anymore. You realize like this relationship ain't for them and you break up with them and and you're just that type of guy where you just bow out of the relationship gracefully, or you bow out of the situation gracefully. You just kind of stop talking to them and, they see you're happy without them and, you're still living like that boils in them some way, and they're just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna start shit and do other stuff. I've had that happen before. I've had it happen, and it sucks. It sucks because at the same time, it's like, as a guy, if you say anything or retaliate anything, then you look crazy. You know what I mean? It only proves her right. Like, oh yep, see, look, that's what she was saying was probably right, man. Damn, And it's like, you only can keep the real ones around, because the real ones ain't going to believe the bullshit, because they're going to ask you, hey, is this what happened? Is this what really went down? You know what I mean? And so, oh, yeah. Oh, that's so messy, man. That is so messy. Tell me he was watching me through the windows. Okay. Guessing my Facebook password and messaged multiple people telling them I had an STI. Found out that he had cheated on me, which I had suspected, but he always denied until we split up, and then he admitted that this girl's kid could be his. Oh, wow. Also found out that he made a move on my cousin when we were together. She was 15. Crazy. Reported me to social services 7 times in 4 years. They always said it was anonymous, but they would only mention the child we had together, not the one I had a couple of years after we split. Reported me for benefit fraud, meaning my house was being watched. Funny enough, nothing came of it because I was doing nothing wrong. Took our son and refused to bring him home. I had to trick him into bringing him back, then said he could take me to court to sort custody. Apparently he was going to go for full custody, but his solicitor must have told him he had no chance, as all he asked for was what he had before he took our son. 2 weeks after court, he had to drop days. Wow. Oh, okay. He has never paid child maintenance and somehow doesn't need to, according to CMS, despite him and his wife working full time. So homeboy pretty much did all this bullshit, and then he's just like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna get my kids." Like, bro, in court, she could just be like, dude was stalking me through the windows. He was hitting on my 15-year-old cousin. He was calling fucking child protective services on me when I wasn't even doing anything with my kids. Like, this man is crazy. Why in the hell would you have my children's living with this crazy ass man? Please don't. And I think the judge is going to be sitting there just like, oh, is this true? You know, like, what's going on? And he's going to be like, oh, well, you know, I mean, it's kind of true. Da, 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 da. And it's just like, oh, really? Okay, well, you're batshit insane. You know, full custody is going to go to her. You're going to have to pay child support. Like, nigga, you're going crazy, bro. You're looking crazy out here. Like, shit. What are we doing, man? Absolutely crazy. He smashed every single CD I own. That's wild. I don't get the whole thing of like, oh, you broke up with me, so then I'm going to smash everything that you love. You know, I don't get it. Just leave. Just leave. I always said it that when somebody breaks up with you, you being happy without them, a lot of times, is the sweetest revenge. You know? Like, if you were great to a person and, you know, you were great to that other person and you were just doing your thing and, you know, you really love that person and they break up with you or they show infidelity, whatever the case may be, and you just bow out and you're just like, you know what? Hey, it is what it is. You leave the relationship and you're happy without them and they can see that. I think that's the best way to do it. You know, you don't have to smash her shit. You don't have to do all this, all that. No, you show her, hey, I'm happy with or without you. You know, and I think that would just sting a lot more. You know what I mean? Like, God, you guys be doing the most, though. Doing the most. Yo, emotional ass men. Had an ex break into my house while I was living with my parents and poke holes in all of my condoms. Luckily, one of her friends wasn't nearly as psycho and let me know. That's crazy, bro. That's, wow. For what? For what? You wanted her to have a baby? So you broke into her house like, nigga. For what? For what? What do you gain out of that? Dude, again, the amount of energy that these guys put into this shit. You know what they could be doing? They could be in the gym building an aesthetic physique. They could be working on themselves, whether it's starting a business, learning a trade, you know, learning tech and AI, doing all kinds of different stuff. Hell, streaming, starting a podcast, doing whatever it is that you want to do in life. You put all that energy into that. Why? Because you can. You're single now. The relationship is going to be hard. It's going to suck to get over it. And you get through it. But I think having a passion and having something to work through, it distracts you so much in such a good way where your success in that, even small success, you know what I mean? It allows you to be like, damn, I'm accomplishing something, you know, like, yeah, I lost something great. but I've accomplished something a little greater, and this is all mine, and it's my own, and it's great. Yeah, and it's just, or, you look yourself in the mirror and you're just like, ooh, and you're thinking to yourself like, damn, I like this. I like the way I look now. I like the way I feel. I like the way I look to other people. I don't know, dude. I just think it's crazy that they put so much energy into this shit. It's just wild to me. All right, I'm going to do 4 more. Leaving me for another woman. My ex-boyfriend used my Google Pay account from a phone I gave him to buy her an engagement ring. What? That's wild. He used your money to buy her an engagement ring. Wow. Oh, that's shiesty. How you gonna do her like that, bro? Damn. That's shiesty. All right. 3 more. He began calling my work over and over, trying to get me fired. I ended up blocking him on every platform I could. Luckily, my boss was really understanding and knew everything, he was understanding and knew everything. And he said he was baseless. Okay. He still makes fake profiles every once in a while to look me up on LinkedIn. Man, again, that's what I'm talking about, bro. All that energy that you're putting into this, looking her up on LinkedIn and doing all this stuff, bro, put it into something. Like, what are we doing, man? Like, dude, start a business, start a YouTube channel, stream. Like, there's just so much you can do. Like, the world is full of opportunities and full of things to do and get into. And I just hate when people get out of a relationship and their first thought is, how can I fuck their life up? And it's like, what are you doing? Instead of trying to fuck their life up, why don't you make yours better? You know what I mean? Why don't you make yours better? Because a lot of times, and there's been many a times when I've gotten out of relationships and I just went ahead and make myself better. And then they're looking at me 2-3 months later and they're like, whoa, shit. This is what he was talking about when we were in the relationship. Because a lot of times for me, I'm a very ambitious person. I love to just get into things like, I don't want to self-promote or nothing, but I do music, and you can look us up at Build Castles in Air. And for me, I make money doing that. You know what I mean? And it's something where I've put a lot of money into it. You know what I mean? It's why my whole little, microphone setup is set up the way it is. I even have a little guitar set up over here. But, I've always had a love for music, and I looked at it like, why not make money off of it? And I connected with people and, started making music and started making albums and putting it out on DistroKid and having people listen to it. And I get paid royalties and all that good stuff. And so, for me, it was one of those things where I'm like, if it blows up, it blows up, and that's cool. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't, but the fact that it does make money, it's great. But, my significant other at the time, she didn't believe in that. She was just like, it's just some pipe dream. Or you're just doing it for fun. It's a hobby. And I'm like, that's fine, but then a couple months later, and then she sees that I'm actually making money off of it. And she's like, oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Like, what? And it's because when she left, I took the time and I'm like, all right, well, I have all the time in the world now because I'm single. I can do the things that I need to do, and I could do that. You know what I mean? And I can make money off of it. And then, when I started this, it was another way of me just kind of utilizing my time to make me better, as a person. Like, you guys know this 100%. My reading is terrible. I think I'm better now, if I'm being honest with you. You guys might disagree. All right. You guys might be in the comment like, well, nigga, shut up. Your reading is trash. Hey, it's cool, man. It's cool. Put that in the comments if that's how you feel. Say it with your chest. All right. If that's how you feel, that's how you feel. I feel like I've changed a lot as far as like reading comprehension, getting comfortable in front of a camera. You can go back to my old episodes. Woo, your boy was stiff. Oh my God, your boy was stiff, man. Oh, it was bad. It was so bad. Your boy was stiff. And I've gotten better with camera angles, and I've gotten better with lighting, and I've gotten better with, certain things where it's just like, You improve and you evolve, but you're making yourself better instead of trying to make someone else's life worse. You know what I mean? Like, instead of sitting there putting all this time into trying to make my ex's life horrible, I decided to make my life better and more enjoyable. I get to do this and it's so much fun. You know, I get to do my music. I get to do other things. You know, I go to the gym and take care of myself and all that. And I like it. It's great. And that's why I always use the gym as an excuse, because for me, when I started hitting the gym really, really hard, I love the way people look at me. They're just like, wow, man, you look different. You look great. And I'm just like, I do? Oh, shit. Thanks. You know, it's a little boost to the self-confidence. It really is. I would never say it's my ego, because I'm a very humble person, and I'm just like, nah. Like, yeah, like, I ain't that big, man. Trust me. I'm 5'7", bro. Like, you know, I'm 5'7", 150 pounds. Like, chill, bro, chill. Like, I ain't nowhere near, you know, these, you know, fucking gods out here. And trust me, I go to the gym with some fucking stacked motherfuckers. These dudes are fucking 170, you know, Adonises and shit. I'm like, Jesus Christ, how can I look like you? You know, I'm a very humble person, for being real with you. But it does help with the self-confidence thing, you know, because for me, sometimes, yeah, I have low self-confidence. I ain't gonna lie to you. There's sometimes, but then there's people that look at me and they're just like, you're putting in work. And I'm just like, oh, I am putting in work, you know. But a lot of times you don't see that result in yourself, but when other people see it, I think that's where the improvement comes from. And then you guys, when you guys comment and you guys like and all that kind of stuff, when I read the comments and stuff like that, and they're just like, you guys are replying to the scenarios and you're replying to the content I'm putting out for you guys, and you're downloading and you're doing all that stuff, that to me is a confidence booster, because I'm like, yes, oh, I'm doing something good. You know, I made a couple people laugh today. You know, I think that's great. And I don't know, I'm going out on a tangent now, but I'm just saying, they put half the energy, man, into this shit, dude. Oh, they could be so much better. And a lot of it is guys, and that's why I'm kind of like able to speak on it, because it seems like girls, they just move on and they're like, fuck it, man, you know, on to the next guy, or I'm gonna do me and I'm gonna hang out with my friends or whatever. It's like, girls, I think they just kind of get it, and guys, they just are so stuck in it, and it's like, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? It's just like, that's crazy behavior to me. All right. Oh, well, I fucked it. Okay, well, my phone clicked off of the thread, but that's going to go ahead and be the end of that thread. I was going to do 2 more, but my thread fucked up, so it is what it is. Without further ado, though, let's get into Court of Thorns and Roses, chapters 11 and 12. I'm going to hit announcements super fast, blaze on through those, and then we'll get on to chapters 11 and 12. Patreon.com/MyLastPodcast. You want to get exclusive episode every single Friday, as well as being able to send in your scenarios to be featured on the Tuesday and Sunday show. Get in on the Patreon, man. $3 a month. That's all I ask for. Even if you just pay the $3 once for, you know, the month, and you get the episodes and you check them out, and you're like, oh man, this is pretty cool, you know, and then you don't, you know, subscribe after that. Totally fine. At least you came in, you hung out, you had a good time. If you are on audio platforms, please keep downloading the podcast. That helps so much. It lets me know that you guys are enjoying what we're doing, and it lets me know that you guys really like the episodes, and you're coming back every Tuesday, Thursday, as well as Sunday. Also, you know, rating the show to get new people in. If you want to help even more on the free 99 side of things, follow us on YouTube, TikTok, as well as Instagram. TikTok and Instagram for our clips. I say Instagram and TikTok just because some clips are on Instagram and not on TikTok, because TikTok is kind of booty sometimes. Follow us on YouTube if you want to see the video side of things. And that's it. All right. Done with announcements. All right, let's get into chapters 11 and 12. Like I said in the top of the show, she's kind of like, I personally feel it's a Haunting Adeline situation where, you know, she's just like, she's in this big ass house with these really handsome dudes, and she's just like, no, I don't like you, but I kind of do. I care about you a little bit. You know what I mean? And I feel like there's just a little tension going on. And then I feel like the two dudes that are in the main house with her, it's been a while, so I don't remember their names. I'm trying to remember all the names. I've been bad with that. But with the two dudes that are in there, the two guys, you could tell that they're kind of like vying for her attention a little bit, and they're kind of butting heads. And that's where I think the whole like love triangle thing is coming from. But at the end of chapter 10, we did see she did see somebody outside the window into the garden, and she assumes that it might be either her grandpa or her dad or something like that. But so we'll figure out about that now, and let's just hop into it. All right.
My father.
It was her dad.
Chapter 11. I didn't give myself a chance to panic, to doubt, to do anything but wish I had stolen some food from my breakfast table as I layered on tunic after tunic and bundled myself in a cloak, stuffing the knife I'd stolen into my boot. The extra clothes in the satchel would just be a burden to carry. My father had come to take me, to save me. Whatever benefits Tamlin had given him upon my departure couldn't be too tempting then. Maybe he had a ship prepared to take us far, far away. Maybe he had somehow sold the cottage and gotten enough money to set us up in a new place, a new continent. My father, my crippled, broken father, had come. A quick survey of the ground beneath my window revealed no one outside, and the silent house told me no one had spotted my father yet. He was still waiting by the hedge, now beckoning to me. At least Tamlin had not returned. With a final glance at my room, listening for anyone approaching from the hall, I grasped the nearby trellis of wisteria and eased down the building. I winced at the crunch of gravel beneath my boots, but my father was already moving toward the outer gates, limping along with his cane. How had he even gotten here? There had to be horses nearby then. He was hardly wearing enough clothing for the winter that would await us once we crossed the wall, but I'd layered on so much that I could spare him some items if need be. Keeping my movements light and silent, carefully avoiding the light of the moon, I hurried after my father. He moved with surprising swiftness toward the darkened hedges and the gate beyond. Only a few hall candles were burning inside the house. I didn't dare breathe too loudly, didn't dare call for my father as he limped toward the gate. If we left now, if he indeed had horses, we could be halfway home by the time they realized I was gone. Then we'd flee. Flee Tamlin, flee the blight that could soon invade our lands. My father reached the gates. They were already open, the dark forest beyond beckoning. He must have hidden the horses deeper in. He turned toward me, that familiar face drawn and tight, those brown eyes clear for once, and beckoned. "Hurry! Hurry!" Every movement of his hand seemed to shout. My heart was a raging beat in my chest, in my throat. Only a few feet now, to him, to freedom, to a new life. A massive hand wrapped around my arm. "Going somewhere?" Shit, shit, shit. Tamlin's claws poked through my layers of clothing as I looked up at him in unabashed terror. I didn't dare move, not as his lips thinned and the muscles in his jaw quivered, not as he opened his mouth and I glimpsed fangs, long, throat-tearing fangs shining in the moonlight. He was going to kill me right there, and then kill my father. No more loopholes, no more flattery, no more mercy. He didn't care anymore. I was as good as dead. "Please," I breathed. "My father—" "Your father?" He lifted his stare to the gates behind me, and his growl rumbled through me as he bared his teeth.
"Why don't you look again?"
He released me. I staggered back a step, whirling, sucking in a breath to tell my father to run, but he wasn't there. Only a pale bow and a quiver of pale arrows remained, propped up against the trees. Mountain ash. They hadn't been there moments before. They rippled, as if they were nothing but water, and then the bow and quiver became a large pack, laden with supplies. Another ripple, and there were my sisters, huddled together, weeping. My knees buckled. "What is—" I didn't finish the question. My father now stood there, still hunched and beckoning. A flawless rendering.
"Weren't you warned to keep your wits about you?" Tamlin snapped. "That your human senses would betray you?"
He stepped beyond me and let out a snarl so vicious that whatever the thing was by the gates shimmered with light and darted out as fast as lightning streaking through the dark.
"Fool," he said to me, turning. "If you're ever going to run away, at least do it in the daytime."
He stared me down, and the fangs slowly retracted. The claws remained.
"There are worse things than the bog prowling these woods at night. That thing at the gates isn't one of them, and it still would have taken a good long while devouring you."
Somehow my mouth began working again, and of all the things to say, I blurted, "Can you blame me? My crippled father appears beneath my window and you think I'm not going to run for him? Do you actually think I'd gladly stay here forever, even if you'd taken care of my family, all for some treaty that had nothing to do with me and allows your kind to slaughter humans as you see fit?" He flexed his fingers as if trying to get the claws back in, but they remained out, ready to slice through flesh and bone.
"What do you want, Farah?"
"I want to go home."
"Home to what, exactly? You'd prefer that miserable human existence to this?"
"I made a promise," I said, my breathing ragged, "to my mother when she died, that I'd look after my family, that I'd take care of them. All I have done every single day, every hour, has been for that vow. And just because I was hunting to save my family, to put food in their bellies, I'm now forced to break it." He stalked toward the house, and I gave him a wide berth before falling into step behind him. His claws slowly retracted. He didn't look at me as he said,
"You are not breaking your vow. You are fulfilling it and then some by staying here. Your family is better cared for now than they were when you were there."
Those chipped, miscolored paintings inside the cottage flashed in my vision. Perhaps they would forget who had even painted them in the first place. Insignificant. That's what all those years I'd given them would be, as insignificant as I was to these high fae. And that dream I'd had of one day living with my father with enough food and money and paint. It had been my dream, no one else's. I rubbed at my chest. "I can't just give up on it, on them, no matter what you say. Even if I had been a fool, a stupid human fool, to believe my father would ever actually come for me." Tamlin eyed me sidelong.
"You're not giving up on them."
"Living in luxury? Stuffing myself with food? How is that not—"
"They are cared for. They are fed and comfortable."
Fed and comfortable. If he couldn't lie, if it was true, then it was beyond anything I'd ever dared hope for. Then my vow to my mother was fulfilled. It stunned me enough that I didn't say anything for a moment as we walked. My life was now owned by the treaty, but perhaps I'd been freed in another sort of way. We neared the sweeping stairs that led into the manor, and I finally asked, "Lucian goes on border patrol, and you've mentioned other sentries, yet I've never seen one here. Where are they all?"
"At the border," he said, as if that were a suitable answer. Then he added, "We don't need sentries if I'm here." Because he was deadly enough, I tried not to think about it, but still I asked,
"Were you trained as a warrior then?"
"Yes."
When I didn't reply, he added,
"I spent most of my life in my father's war band on the borders, training as a warrior to one day serve him, or others. Running these lands was not supposed to fall to me."
The flatness with which he said it told me enough about how he felt about his current title, about why the presence of his silver-tongued friend was necessary. But it was too personal, too demanding to ask what had occurred to change his circumstances so greatly. So I cleared my throat and said, "What manner of fairies prowl the woods beyond this gate, if the bog isn't the worst of them? What was that thing?" What I'd meant to ask was, what would have tormented and then eaten me? Who are you to be so powerful that they pose no threat to you? He paused on the bottom step, waiting for me to catch up.
"A puka. They use your own desires to lure you to some remote place. Then they eat you. Slowly. It probably smelled your human scent in the woods and followed it to the house."
I shivered and didn't bother to hide it. Tamlin went on.
"These lands used to be well guarded. The deadlier fairies were contained within the borders of their native territories, monitored by the local Fey lords or driven into hiding. Creatures like the puka never would have dared set foot here. But now, the sickness that infected Prithian has weakened the wards that kept them out."
A long pause, like the words were choked out of him.
"Things are different now. It's not safe to travel alone at night, especially if you're human."
Because humans were defenseless as babes compared to natural-born predators like Lucian and Tamlin, who didn't need weapons to hunt. I glanced at his hands but found no trace of the claws, only tanned, calloused skin. "What else is different now?" I asked, trailing him up the marble front steps. He didn't stop this time, didn't even look over his shoulder to see me, as he said,
"Everything."
So I truly was to live there forever. As much as I longed to ensure that Tamlin's word about caring for my family was true, as much as his claim that I was taking better care of my family by staying away, even if I was truly fulfilling that vow to my mother by staying in Prithian, without the weight of that promise, I was left hollow and empty. Over the next 3 days, I found myself joining Lucian on Andrus's old patrol while Tamlin hunted the grounds for the bog, unseen by us. Despite being an occasional bastard, Lucian didn't seem to mind my company, and he did most of the talking, which was fine. It left me to brood over the consequences of firing a single arrow. An arrow. I never fired a single one during those 3 days we rode along the border. That very morning I'd spied a red doe in a glen and aimed out of instinct, my arrow poised to fly right into her eye as Lucian sneered that she was not a fairy, at least. But I'd stared at her, fat and healthy and content, and then slackened the bow, replaced the arrow in my quiver, and let the doe wander on. I never saw Tamlin around the manor, off hunting the bog day and night, Lucian informed me. Even at dinner, he spoke little before leaving early, off to continue his hunt night after night. I didn't mind his absence. It was a relief, if anything. On the third night after my encounter with the puka, I'd scarcely sat down before Tamlin got up, giving an excuse about not wanting to waste hunting time. Lucian and I stared after him for a moment. What I could see of Lucian's face was pale and tight. "You worry about him," I said. Lucian slumped in his seat, wholly undignified for a Fey lord.
Tamlin gets into moods.
He doesn't want your help hunting the bog?
He prefers being alone, and having the bog on our lands, I don't suppose you'd understand. The puka are minor enough not to bother him, but even after he's shredded the bog, he'll brood over it.
And there's no one who can help him at all?
He would probably shred them for disobeying his order to stay away.
A brush of ice slithered across my nape. He would be that brutal? Lucian studied the wine in his goblet.
You don't hold on to power by being everyone's friend. And among the fairies, lesser and high fae alike, a firm hand is needed. We're too powerful and too bored with immortality to be checked by anything else.
It seemed like a cold, lonely position to have, especially when you didn't particularly want it. I wasn't sure why it bothered me so much. The snow was falling, thick and merciless, already up to my knees as I pulled the bowstring back, farther and farther, until my arm trembled. Behind me, a shadow lurked. No, watched. I didn't dare turn to look at it, to see who might be within that shadow, observing, not as the wolf stared at me across the clearing. Just staring, as if waiting, as if daring me to fire the ash arrow. No, I didn't want to do it. Not this time, not again. Not... But I had no control over my fingers, absolutely none, and he was still staring as I fired. One shot straight through that golden eye. A plume of blood splattering the snow, a thud of a heavy body, a sigh of wind. No! It wasn't a wolf that hit the snow. No, it was a man, tall and well-formed. No, not a man. A high fae with those pointed ears. I blinked, and then my hands were warm and sticky with blood. Then his body was red and skinless, steaming in the cold, and it was his skin that I held in my hands, and... I threw myself awake, sweat slipping down my back, and forced myself to breathe, to open my eyes and note each detail of the night-dark bedroom. Real. This was real. But I could still see that high fae male face down in the snow, my arrow through his eye, red and bloody all over from where I'd cut and peeled off his skin. Bile stung my throat. Not real. Just a dream. Even if what I'd done to Andrus, even as a wolf, was. I scrubbed at my face. Perhaps it was the quiet, the hollowness of the past few days. Perhaps it was only that I no longer had to think hour to hour about how to keep my family alive, but it was regret, and maybe shame that coated my tongue, my bones. I shuddered as if I could fling it off, and kicked back the sheets to rise from the bed. Chapter 12. I couldn't entirely shake the horror, the gore of my dream as I walked down the dark halls of the manor, the servants and Lucian long since asleep. But I had to do something, anything after that nightmare, if only to avoid sleeping. A bit of paper in one hand and a pen gripped in the other, I carefully traced my steps, noting the windows and doors and exits, occasionally jotting down vague sketches and X's on the parchment. It was the best I could do, and to any literate human, my markings would have made no sense. But I couldn't write or read more than my basic letters, and my makeshift map was better than nothing. If I were to remain here, it was essential to know the best hiding places, the easiest way out should things ever go badly for me. I couldn't entirely let go of the instinct. It was too dim to admire any of the paintings lining the walls, and I didn't dare risk a candle. These past 3 days, there had been servants in the halls when I'd worked up the nerve to look at the art, and the part of me that spoke with Nesta's voice had laughed at the idea of an ignorant human trying to admire fairy art. Some other time, then, I'd told myself. I would find another day, a quiet hour when no one was around to look at them. I had plenty of hours now, a whole lifetime in front of me. Perhaps I'd figure out what I wished to do with it. I crept down the main staircase, moonlight flooding the black and white tiles of the entrance hall. I reached the bottom, my bare feet silent on the cold tiles, and listened. Nothing. No one. I set my little map on the foyer table and drew a few X's and circles to signify the doors, the windows, the marble stairs of the front hall. I would become so familiar with the house that I could navigate it even if someone blinded me. A breeze announced his arrival, and I turned from the table toward the long hall to the open glass doors to the garden. I'd forgotten how huge he was in this form, forgotten the curled horns and lupine face, the bear-like body that moved with a feline fluidity. His green eyes glowed in the darkness, fixing on me, and as the doors snicked shut behind him, the clicking of claws on marble filled the hall. I stood still, not daring to flinch, to move a muscle. He limped slightly, and in the moonlight, dark shining stains were left in his wake. He continued toward me, stealing the air from the entire hall. He was so big that the space felt cramped, like a cage. The scrape of claw, a huff of uneven breathing, the dripping of blood. Between one step and the next, he changed forms, and I squeezed my eyes shut at the blinding flash. When at last my eyes adjusted to the returning darkness, he was standing in front of me. Standing, but not quite there. No sign of the baldric or his knives. His clothes were in shreds, long, vicious slashes that made me wonder how he wasn't gutted and dead. But the muscled skin peering out beneath his shirt was smooth, unharmed. "Did you kill the bog?" My voice was hardly more than a whisper.
Yes.
A dull, empty answer, as if he couldn't be bothered to remember to be pleasant, as if I were at the very, very bottom of a long list of priorities. "You're hurt," I said, even more quietly. Indeed, his hand was covered in blood, even more splattering on the floor beneath him. He looked at it blankly, as if it took some monumental effort to remember that he even had a hand and that it was injured. What effort of will and strength had it taken to kill the bog, to face that wretched menace? How deep had he had to dig inside himself, to whatever immortal power and animal that lived there, to kill it? He glanced down at the map on the table, and his voice was void of anything. Any emotion, any anger or amusement, as he said, "What is that?" I snatched up the map. I thought I should learn my surroundings. Drip, drip, drip. I opened my mouth to point out his hand again, but he said, "You can't write, can you?" I didn't answer. I didn't know what to say. Ignorant, insignificant human. No wonder you became so adept at other things. I supposed he was so far gone in thinking about his encounter with the bog that he hadn't realized the compliment he'd given me, if it was a compliment. Another splatter of blood on the marble. "Where can we clean up your hand?" He lifted his head to look at me again, still and silent and weary. Then he said, "There's a small infirmary." I wanted to tell myself that it was probably the most useful thing I'd learned all night. But as I followed him there, avoiding the blood he trailed, I thought of what Lucian had told me about his isolation, that burden. Thought of what Tamlin had mentioned about how these estates should not have been his, and felt sorry for him. The infirmary was well stocked, but was more of a supply closet with a work table than an actual place to host sick fairies. I suppose that was all they needed when they could heal themselves with their immortal powers. But this wound wasn't healing. Tamlin slumped against the edge of the table, gripping his injured hand at the wrist as he watched me sort through the supplies in the cabinets and drawers. When I'd gathered what I needed, I tried not to balk at the thought of touching him, but I didn't let myself give in to my dread as I took his hand, the heat of his skin like an inferno against my cool fingers. I cleaned off his bloody, dirty hand, bracing for the first flash of those claws. But his claws remained retracted, and he kept silent as I bound and wrapped his hand. Surprisingly enough, there were no more than a few vicious cuts, none of them requiring stitching. I secured the bandage in place and stepped away, bringing the bowl of bloody water to the deep sink in the back of the room. His eyes were a brand upon me as I finished cleaning, and the room became too small, too hot. He'd killed the bog and walked away relatively unscathed. If Tamlin was that powerful, then the High Lords of Prithian must be near gods. Every mortal instinct in my body bleated in panic at the thought. I was almost at the open door, stifling the urge to bolt back to my room when he said, "You can't write, yet you learned to hunt, to survive. How?" I paused with my foot on the threshold. That's what happens when you're responsible for lives other than your own, isn't it? You do what you have to do. He was still sitting on the table, still straddling that inner line between the here and now and wherever he had to go in his mind to endure the fight with the bog. I met his feral and glowing stare. "You aren't what I expected. For a human," he said. I didn't reply, and he didn't say goodbye as I walked out. The next morning, as I made my way down the grand staircase, I tried not to think too much about the clean-washed marble tiles on the floor below. No sign of the blood Tamlin had lost. I tried not to think too much at all about our encounter, actually. When I found the front hall empty, I almost smiled, felt a ripple in that hollow emptiness that had been hounding me. Perhaps now, perhaps in this moment of quiet, I could at last look through the art on the walls, take time to observe it, learn it, admire it. Heart racing at the thought, I was about to head toward a hall I had noted was nearly covered in painting after painting when low male voices floated out from the dining room. I paused. The voices were tense enough that I made my steps silent as I slid into the shadows behind the open door. A cowardly, wretched thing to do, but what they were saying had me shoving aside any guilt. I just want to know what you think you're doing. It was Lucian, that familiar lazy viciousness coating each word.
What are you doing? Tamlin snapped.
Through the space between the hinge and the door, I could glimpse the two of them standing almost face to face. On Tamlin's non-bandaged hand, his claws shone in the morning light.
Me?
Lucian put a hand on his chest.
By the cauldron, Tam, there isn't much time, and you're just sulking and glowering. You're not even trying to fake it anymore.
My brows rose. Tamlin turned away, but whirled back a moment later, his teeth bared.
It was a mistake from the start. I can't stomach it, not after what my father did to their kind, to their lands. I won't follow in his footsteps, won't be that sort of person, so back off. Back off? Back off while you seal our fates and ruin everything? I stayed with you out of hope, not to watch you stumble. For someone with a heart of stone, yours is certainly soft these days. The bog was on our lands. The bog, Tamlin. The barriers between courts have vanished, and even our woods are teeming with filth like the puka. Are you just going to start living out there? Slaughtering every bit of vermin that slinks in? Watch your mouth, Tamlin said.
Lucian stepped toward him, exposing his teeth as well. A pulsing kind of air hit me in the stomach, and a metallic stench filled my nose. But I couldn't see any magic, only feel it. I couldn't tell if that made it worse.
Don't push me, Lucian.
Tamlin's tone became dangerously quiet, and the hair on the back of my neck stood as he emitted a growl that was pure animal.
You don't think I know what's happening on my own lands? What I've got to lose? What's lost already?
The blight. Perhaps it was contained, but it seemed it was still wreaking havoc, still a threat, and perhaps one they didn't truly want me knowing about, either from lack of trust or because I was no one and nothing to them. I leaned forward, but as I did, my finger slipped and softly thudded against the door. A human might not have heard, but both high fae whirled. My heart stumbled. I stepped toward the threshold, clearing my throat as I came up with a dozen excuses to shield myself. I looked at Lucian and forced myself to smile. His eyes widened, and I had to wonder if it was because of that smile or because I looked truly guilty. "Are you going out for a ride?" I said, feeling a bit sick as I gestured behind me with a thumb. I hadn't planned on riding with him today, but it sounded like a decent excuse. Lucian's russet eye was bright, though the smile he gave me didn't meet it. The face of Tamlin's emissary, more court-trained and calculating than I'd seen him yet.
"I'm unavailable today," he said.
He jerked his chin to Tamlin.
"He'll go with you."
Tamlin shot his friend a look of disdain that he took few pains to hide. His usual baldric was armed with more knives than I'd seen before, and their ornate metal handles glinted as he turned to me, his shoulders tight.
"Wherever you want to go, just say so."
The claws of his free hand slipped back under his skin. No. I almost said it aloud as I turned pleading eyes to Lucian. Lucian merely patted my shoulder as he passed by.
"Perhaps tomorrow, human."
Alone with Tamlin, I swallowed hard. He stood there waiting. don't want to go for a hunt, I finally said quietly. True. I hate hunting. He cocked his head.
Then what do you want to do?
Tamlin led me down the halls. A soft breeze laced with the scent of roses slipped in through the open windows to caress my face.
You've been going for hunts,
Tamlin said at last.
but you really don't have any interest in hunting.
He cast me a sidelong glance.
No wonder you two never catch anything.
No trace of the hollow, cold warrior of the night before, or of the angry fey noble of minutes before. Just Tamlin right now, it seemed. I'd be a fool to let my guard down around Tamlin, to think that his acting naturally meant anything, especially when something was so clearly amiss at his estate. He'd taken down the bog, and that made him the most dangerous creature I'd ever encountered. I didn't quite know what to make of him, and said somewhat stiltedly, "How's your hand?" He flexed his bandaged hand, studying the white bindings, stark and clean against his sun-kissed skin.
I didn't thank you.
You don't need to. But he shook his head, and his golden hair caught and held the morning light as if it were spun from the sun itself.
The bog's bite was crafted to slow the healing of High Fae long enough to kill us. You have my gratitude.
When I shrugged it off, he added,
How did you learn to bind wounds like this? I can still use the hand, even with the wrappings.
Trial and error. I had to be able to pull a bowstring the next day. He was quiet as we turned down another sun-drenched marble hallway, and I dared to look at him. I found him carefully studying me, his lips in a thin line.
Has anyone ever taken care of you?
He asked quietly. No. I'd long since stopped feeling sorry for myself about it.
Did you learn to hunt in a similar manner? Trial and error?
I spied on hunters when I could get away with it, and then practiced until I hit something. When I missed, we didn't eat. So learning how to aim was the first thing I figured out.
I'm curious,
he said casually. The amber in his green eyes was glowing. Perhaps not all traces of that beast warrior were gone.
Are you ever going to use that knife you stole from my table?
I stiffened. How did you know? Beneath the mask, I could have sworn his brows were raised.
I was trained to notice those things, but I could smell the fear on you more than anything.
I grumbled. I thought no one noticed. He gave me a crooked smile, more genuine than all the faked smiles and flattery he'd given me before.
Regardless of the treaty, if you want to stand a chance at escaping my kind, you'll need to think more creatively than stealing dinner knives. But with your affinity for eavesdropping, maybe you'll someday learn something valuable.
My ears flared with heat. I wasn't... Sorry, I mumbled. But I ran through what I'd overheard. There was no point in pretending I hadn't eavesdropped. Lucian said you didn't have much time. What did he mean? Are more creatures like the bog going to come here thanks to the blight? Tamlin went rigid, scanning the hall around us, taking in every sight and sound and scent. Then he shrugged, too stiff to be genuine.
I'm an immortal. I have nothing but time, Thera.
He said my name with such intimacy, as if he weren't a creature capable of killing monsters made from nightmares. I opened my mouth to demand more of an answer, but he cut me off.
The force plaguing our lands and powers, that too will pass someday if we're cauldron blessed. But yes, now that the bog entered these lands, I'd say it's fair to assume others might follow it, especially if the puka was already so bold.
If the borders between the courts were gone, though, as I'd heard Lucian say, if everything in Prithian was different, as Tamlin had claimed, thanks to this blight, well, I didn't want to be caught up in some brutal war or revolution. I doubted I'd survive very long. Tamlin strode ahead and opened a set of double doors at the end of the hall. The powerful muscles of his back shifted beneath his clothes. I'd never forget what he was capable of, what he'd been trained to do, apparently.
As requested, he said, the study.
I saw what lay beyond him, and my stomach twisted.
All right. And that will conclude today's episode. And that'll conclude chapters 11 and 12. If you guys enjoyed today's episode, if you guys liked our 2 chapters that we got going on here, like I was saying, man, there's a little sexual tension up in that bad boy. She was like, he said my name so intimately. Yeah, what they could say. No, but I'm just saying, you know, it seems like there's a little tension. And even when she was like cleaning his hand, you know, she was like, ooh, maybe it's Maybelline, you know. But again, hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Again, patreon.com/MyLastPodcast. We're going to get an exclusive episode every single Friday and be able to send in your scenario to be featured on Tuesday and Sunday episodes. Get on there, man. Check that out. Audio listeners, keep checking out every episode, downloading, rating the podcast 5 stars. Thank you guys for all that support. If you want to help on the free 99 side, again, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Follow us on all 3. That's in our link tree. If you love these episodes and these episodes only, I have playlists to all the episodes that we have done for Haunting Adeline as well as this book in separate playlists down in that sexy little description. Love you guys all so much. I'll see you on Sunday for some wacky crazy shit, and that'll be it. If you're on Patreon, I'll see you Friday, then I'll see you Sunday. So love you all and peace.